Okay. I'm going to bring this music down just a bit. Are we ready to begin? Let's do it. Okay, welcome to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and as you know, I'm going to be showing you a little bit about how to draw today. So, I'm super excited to have a little bit of music playing that was specially composed for this show by one of my dearest friends of all, Sam Davidson. And you'll let me know in the comments if it's too loud or too quiet and just maybe a little bit distracting, or I'm just trying a little something different to kind of keep some momentum so that maybe there's a bit of music playing rather than me blabbing on all the time. So again, if there's any kind of problems with that, let me know in the comment section below. Another thing, I've got my wireless lavalier microphone working on here, and the battery is dangerously low. And you know, like that Seinfeld episode where Kramer takes the was it a rental car from the dealership, and they drive and on the with the gas tank almost empty. That's sort of what I'm attempting to do here. So we're going to see how long that holds out. It's new equipment, so I'm curious how long the battery actually lasts. But so if that does, I've got other microphones kind of queued up here, ready to go, should anything disastrous take place here. Okay. So, everyone's got their sketchbook, and everyone's got a pencil and some colored pencils, perhaps. We're ready to go. You got your cup of tea. Okay. So what I want to do today is I want to show you probably my favorite drawing method technique of all. And this method is called the block-in technique, or the envelope technique, or the marble block, or the chisel sculpture technique. There's different ways that I've heard it referred to, although I would say this is probably one of the most obscure ways that I've ever seen people use to draw the human figure. And once you learn how to do this, you could also apply it to all sorts of different things, drawing buildings and cars and dogs and apples and oranges, etc., etc. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to work our way from the outside in. Whereas previously, what we've learned so far is kind of working our way from the inside, from the line of action, to the outside, right? So to further kind of see the contrast of these two different methods, we're going to begin as we did last week. We're going to use the line of action and some rhythm lines to make a drawing, and then we're going to do it again maybe a little bit later on, or maybe right afterwards. We'll see how how things go. We're going to do it with the block-in technique, so you'll kind of see the two pretty much the exact opposite approaches. So I've got I had something queued up here ready for us. Come on. So I thought I like this idea of drawing a few different kinds of superheroes because they're familiar to people, and also, you know, superheroes tend to be wearing these ridiculously form-fitting outfits that are actually really helpful for us when we're learning to draw. Because especially when we're here on the internet, and this is a family-friendly, my channel is anyway, family-friendly, so if we had a whole bunch of nude figures, the video would get taken down, and I want this to be as accessible for as many people as possible. So on the screen here we have the Marvel superhero Black Widow. And we're going to learn how to draw her and we're going to draw from the line of action. So that's that image. Let's bring this one up. And okay. So I've also got a new overhead camera that I'm trying out today. So it ideally should be a little bit of a sharper image, I'm hoping. So you let me know how that works as well. Okay, so I'm going to do this with two different colors of pencil. I'm going to start my line of action with the red, or I guess this is a little bit more of a magenta, and then this kind of teal blue. Okay, so to begin with this drawing, I'm going to look for the main kind of thrust of action in this image. So let's, you know what, I'm even going to, since her body is oriented a little bit more landscape, I'm going to draw it like this. So just see. I want to be able to, you can see that I'm right here edge to edge in the area. You can see my other hand here. Just so you know how big this drawing is going to be. Because especially with a warm-up drawing, we want to do something with lots of room. So here's this arc, right? So you can see this is where her head would be. Right, and then there's the foot. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for these. Well, let's before we even get in there, let's do the other action lines. So we've got this, and then we've got right, and this one is kind of like that. All right, so we're starting off with a kind of stick figure kind of form, and then now let's. I'm going to draw the rhythm lines that would kind of encase the line of action. Okay, so we've got the head here. I'm going to wait till a little bit here before we draw the hair, but we've got like a neck, the outside part of her neck, right? And then we've got, this would be kind of her shoulders into her forearm. Right, and then her chest, and then her rib cage, and then here's her hips. We're going to be right there, and then here's one leg. All right, here's another leg, or this is the inside of the thigh. Sorry, and then we've got her heel. The front part of her leg. Okay. I'm going to come back up to the shoulder here, and we've got her bicep, her forearm, and then her hand, and oh, that's pretty big, but I'm going to leave it because we're not going to be too concerned about getting that right just yet. Right, so it looks a little bit big, but we're going to kind of maybe, well, we'll see how much time I want to spend on this as a warm-up drawing, but and then so we've got her torso in here. Chest, and then this big long line for her leg, and her foot, okay, and actually maybe we'll bring that even further ahead, and then so maybe that leg is a little bit long, so we can always make it a little bit shorter. So just so you can see, let's say instead her knee would be kind of in here, so I'm just going to shorten it all. And maybe, well, maybe it's still a little bit long, but I think what I'm just going to quickly do here, and I'm not sure how, obviously, I don't know where everybody else is in their drawing, but I'll just kind of work really kind of quickly. We haven't done anything with portraiture, so I'm not going to really do much here with in terms of faces. Hair. Oh yeah, her fist. Oh, and I said I'd come back here and fix this arm. This looks like it was a little bit bulky. So I think her hand would be a little bit shorter in here. Okay, and then so she's got her belt in here. You can, then these kind of whatever weapons or something strapped to her thighs. Okay, I think just for our purpose for a warm-up drawing, that's pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, this is, in terms of this, I'm just going to make this a little bit darker here so you can see. In terms of like a warm-up, and also just to get your pencil into the vicinity of the artwork. See, that's still a little bit long, but that's okay. That would be what we would want. Like, we really wouldn't want to spend more time at this stage of the drawing. Now we could start kind of going in and putting in the details, but let's learn a totally different technique. And we're going to use this drawing as the basis for it. So I'm going to change my page here, and maybe while people are finishing up, it's tea time. Okay. So this method, what is exciting about it is I find it, it makes, for me, this comes most naturally, this next technique I'm going to show you. I think I've taught this same kind of technique. I've introduced it to students, my students at Emily Carr, and like fourth-year students who've never seen it or heard it. No one's ever taught them this technique before. So this is a technique which is probably news to most people. And I don't know why, because I find it, once I learned it, I should actually show you just so I can kind of, this is where I first learned about this technique. It's this Anthony Ryder is the author's name. This is the book that he wrote that kind of talks about his technique in here. Let's see, just a little bio on the back there. Or here, I'll show you the whole back of the book. So, and I got this from the public library here in Vancouver. Yeah, so anyway, you're like, okay, let's just do it. Okay, so let's do it. So let's go to, and we got a blank page in our sketchbook. What this involves is, you can imagine you're Michelangelo and you're going to a quarry. Maybe before I even do that, you're going to a quarry to find a big block of marble to make a sculpture of the image that is on your screen right now, right? So you're looking at all these blocks, and you see some that are really tall, some that are very square, you know, and marble is expensive, right? So you want to pay the least amount possible. So you want to find the block of marble that fits, that your figure can fit inside of, right? Or as they used to say about Michelangelo, is that he would, unleash the figure that was trapped inside of the block, right? He was sort of like, you know, the figures from Pompeii, you know, releasing them from the shell that they're surrounded by, right? So you want to try to find the envelope, which is another way that's described as a block or an envelope or even a coffin of some kind that this could fit the person inside of. So let's begin this here. Okay, so what I'm looking for is the outside edges. And again, it doesn't matter if we get all of it perfect now or at any other time, really. So I'm looking for, if this was one big block of marble, something like that. Like that would be the kind of block that I would need. Okay, so now what we're going to do, once we've got the basic block, this is strapped to the back of our flatbed truck, or a bunch of horses are hauling it from the quarry back to your studio. Now you've got it in the studio. Now we got to chisel out the figure. So I'll even include her hair in here. So here's kind of the outside edge of where her hair would be, and then here's her arm. And you see, I'm just going to take out chunks, right? I'm not going into detail. I'm just looking for some chunks that I can, right? You see this line kind of coming down from her torso, right? And then, okay. So this might look a little bit weird. It can be a little bit difficult for some people, for sure. Especially if you're just kind of starting out with drawing to begin with, it's a little bit tricky. But I think if you stick with this and you kind of power through it, you can really get some really cool results. And you can see I'm going a little bit, I might have to go outside of the envelope or the block at times, right? And you don't have to work your way all the way around like I'm doing. Like, you can kind of jump around, but just for the sake of convenience here. Okay, on this side. Okay. So we have the general shape of the figure in here, right? Like, this is, if there was a murder, and this is the crime scene, and this is how the body was found. This is how, they put the crime scene tape or the chalk outline around the body like that, right? So we start with this here. So now we're going to get into, as we go, we're going to get more and more kind of refined into the detail. So now let's go into, we had her hair here. So I'm just going to kind of, and you don't have to use straight lines all the time. If you want to at some point start using some arcs, you can. I just find this kind of maybe a little bit more helpful to just start out with kind of much more angular shapes. All right, so the next, so as I'm doing this, another thing I'm starting to look at is I'm looking for, I want to see, try to match up the angles that I see. So for instance, right now I'm looking at this you know, inside thigh here, right? So this might be, you know, if I put my pencil like that, you see how it's basically going in the same diagonal direction as it is in the image off to the right here, right? So that is really helpful because this, now I know that this angle is pretty close, all right? And I might need to kind of come up there a little bit, but we'll see. Okay, and then the same thing here. If I look at this here, that's the way I've drawn it, but when I look in the image, it looks like I should be up a little bit more, kind of like that, right? So that tells me this could come up here. Okay, and then if this is here, okay, so then let's also look. Pretty much every line, once you lay it down, is in relationship to every other line. So then, for instance, let's look at kind of her, if this leg continues up here, right? It in the original, we see that pretty much comes right up to and through her shoulder, right? But that's not what I've got here. So instead, there's a few things I could do. I could move everything over a little bit, or move this a little bit over here. So which way do I want to go here? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move her leg over. So that means this is kind of more aligned with, you can see now that this is her inside of her torso. All right. Okay. So I know this can seem a little bit, especially right now, a little like all these lines going across. Maybe I'll use a different color here. But the reason why I'm kind of showing you these kind of diagonals is it really helps solve problems. Because if I just continued drawing that drawing, there would be I could spend a lot of time up here, and it's going to look gorgeous. And then as I start moving here, there would be some really weird thing going on with her legs, right? So this is why it's really important to get the drawing right at this stage of the drawing. Okay, so I've got, if this is her leg, right, then let's look at the diagonal for the other leg. So it's kind of a little bit like this. Right? Okay. And so this leg, we're still happy with this, but if this is her torso, actually it looks like maybe that could work fine. Okay. So everything just kind of moves over a little bit. I hear the overhead camera focusing, and maybe I'm just going to turn this to manual focus here. So I'm curious if my microphone was picking up any of that weird sound. And how's the music level at this? Hopefully it's not too loud, or is it just too quiet that it just becomes like a bug in your ear? I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about that. Other things too, again, so if I look at her, so I've started to kind of figure out this part of the leg. Now if I'm happy with where this knee is, right, then I can draw a line straight up. And then I see, well, her elbow is maybe just a little bit in here. Right, so I can chisel a little bit of this out. All right. And then let's say, you know, this, her ear here. If we were to draw this kind of straight down, then it looks almost like it should be over here. So then this tells me I can actually move her head up here. So this is, all of this is like diagnostic tools that are really helpful for drawing the figure. Especially if you want accuracy. If you don't care about accuracy, then you can disregard this. But I also find like this looks really cool. Like we start getting into the these very blocky lines are really just, I just think that they look neat. Also, you know, it's, I can tell when I look at a drawing that has no underlying, I can look at a finished drawing and I can tell that whether or not there is an underlying structure in there or not. And often there isn't. And it just, versus, you know, even if all those pencil lines are erased, it's still, they kind of like, it lingers there. You can kind of, they always, they're kind of hinted at. It's like the skeleton, you know, is always there, whether you can see it or not. It's okay. Looking over here, I can see this elbow. Okay, so let's, I'm going to kind of now block in this as I feel like everything is kind of in the right area here. So I'm going to, here's her ear and her face. Again, I'm not going to spend much time on this here, but I got her hair. Kind of comes down into her outfit here. Got her shoulder, and then her elbow, and this kind of, I don't know what these are, some kind of bullets or rockets or and even after I'm done with this, this blue, I can always make any other changes. Like, you know, I feel like this leg might be a little bit long, so even while I'm right here, let's just shrink it down. So also what I'm doing here is a lot like doing the rhythm lines that we did previously, right? It's maybe just a little bit more structured. Okay, she's got her hair. Okay, how do I feel about that? Like, oh, pretty close. I'm not going to do her whole costume and everything on here. If you want, you can pause the video and you can spend as long as you want on that. I just want to kind of introduce this concept here. I don't think this will erase very well, but just for people watching at home, just for some clarity, I'm just going to darken this just a little bit. That leg, I think, might have tripped people up a little bit. Okay. So there's that technique versus this one. All right. You can see this one, for me, seems a little bit more accurate than this one. Especially, I think, for those of you that maybe are a little bit more left-brained, right? This one might be a little bit more challenging because it's trying to see a line that isn't there, right? You're trying to find that action line, versus this one, you can almost like do this with a kind of mathematical precision, right? Like technically, you know, if you had a magazine and you're trying to do this one for one, you could if I had a magazine around here, I could show you, but you know, I could do a little dot on, let's say, the top of the head in the magazine or the comic, and then I could do another kind of dot on the thumb. And then I could say, okay, well, I'll measure that, and that is, let's say, 12 centimeters in the magazine. And then I go here. So you could literally plot this out. So this may be easier for some people than others to use this particular kind of technique. So let's try, we'll do a few more of these. So maybe I'll leave that up for just a second while I I'm going to go for another image here. So we had black. Let's do, or this is Captain Marvel. Let's go for the movie, so the Brie Larson version here, which I thought was kind of, actually, I think I pulled out an image here that I thought was just kind of interesting, just while we're talking about this. You know, we have one version, this is sort of the comic version of the character, versus the movie version, right? And obviously you can see the difference between, you know, this Brie Larson is a real person, so she doesn't have quite these absurd physical proportions like a Barbie doll, right? So this is a little bit more, you know, natural. Okay, so do I want to draw this? Yeah, okay, sure. Let's do that. Since I've got that up here on the screen. I personally like to use this technique for figures that are kind of crouched, or just like in a kind of a tighter kind of a ball, or kind of laying or reclining figures, because you can kind of more easily see the envelope. But let's do it for this particular kind of figure as well. We're going to draw the Brie Larson, the version here on your right. Oh, it's just a little bit too big. It won't quite fit all in there, so that's a shame. Okay, so let's look for. We're drawing the figure on the left. We're going to do this, or we're even, well, I guess we're going to enlarge things just, actually, you know what, I'm sure I could get a little bit more in here. No? Okay, sorry, I was just thinking surely I could get a little bit more specific. Let's crop. Okay, there we go. So let's start out at the, well, you can start anywhere you want, but let's say I'm going to start up here, and then I'm going to draw down here. Let's say this is an elbow, and then one leg here, and then I'm going to come back up here. Let's go all the way down, and then we've got another one here. Okay. So, you know, you could think about this as like, this is the package that it would come in, right? If you were going to build, if this is, you're taking this to a manufacturer and you say, this is, you know, the basic, everything's got to fit inside of here for the box and the plastic and, you know, everything that comes inside. This is what we would need, right? This is the amount of space inside of the box that is required. So now let's start kind of chiseling into this shape a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to even keep her hair in there. All right, so she's got kind of, her hair makes her head look really kind of big up there, but that's all right. See, I'm just sort of continuing. This would be her shoulders kind of going across. Maybe I will, well, I was going to say I'll draw the face in there, but I'm going to hold off on that for a second. Looks like maybe this come up a little bit. And then, so if this was her arm, I'm cutting out this negative shape. And let's, just for the sake, let's do this again on this side. All right. Okay. And then do this, and then uh-oh, what's wrong? What happened here where this isn't fitting? So what can we do? So let's kind of rewind a little bit. If you get into a position like this, and you're like, okay, uh-oh, something's bad. Doesn't mean let's start all over again. What I would like for you just to try to make this work. Okay, so let's figure out how we can make it work. So let's just keep on going. Let's have faith that we can make it work. All right, so I'm going to now just chisel in. This is where her face is surrounded by her hair. All right, so maybe that still looks kind of big. So I can draw this kind of sphere. Okay, so that means we can chisel her hair in more than I originally did. Maybe even a little more from this side. All right, so her eyes, nose, mouth, all right? We keep her shoulders here. That means, and I'm just going to darken this a little bit. You would be drawing very lightly here, but for our sake. Okay, so you see already, I can make a change here. I think, though, what I'm going to also do at this stage, since I had a problem down here, I'm going to try to solve this problem and then come back up here and see if I can fix this. So let's say I'm going to go from the outside edge of her face. And let's say I draw a straight line right down. So if I'm looking at the image to the right here, that, and I can even hold my pencil up, you know, so you kind of hold the pencil up and you can kind of draw a line on it to see how it works, right? So then let's come back down here, and it looks kind of like her outside of her edge is kind of coming right down into her thigh here. So that would tell me that this leg should be something like that. Does that look pretty good? Okay. Right, and then her nose looks like it's coming right down in her crotch area here, right? So then we can do this, and then we can kind of build her legs up here, right? So now the edge of her, the outside of her body is right around here with her elbow. So, but then I look here, if I draw a line straight down, where does that go, right? I look again at this picture. Well, her outside of her leg is maybe a little bit further out here. So maybe this line needs to come out a little bit more. Okay, so it's just that kind of checking and correcting here. Can't hear the music. Let's see. Did the music stop? Okay, so just boosting the music a little bit there. Okay. All right, so again, I can see if I continue that line, it pretty much goes right out to the edge of her shoulder, so that makes me really happy. All right, the same thing here. Right out to the edge of her shoulder. So then in her chest here, looking pretty good. Now, obviously, as we do this, we're going to get better and better and much faster as we go. But this is our introductory class, so I'm not. I'm kind of going kind of nice and slow here. So again, here's if this is her hand, and then she's got her fingers here. Right, and then it means her belt is right here. So maybe this would have to come down. So now let's think about like proportions, right? So if I have, you know, often I look around for, well, we can just sort of do this with my pencil here. Let's say this is one head, 2, 3, 4. Remember we talked about the crotch is going to be right here, 4, 5. Let's see if it was 5, 6, 7. So technically, I could, to make this kind of that 7.5 figure, her feet could come down just a little bit lower, right? Okay. So I'm going to sharpen my pencil. And then now I'm going to start going over some of these lines here. So I'm going to try as much as possible to ignore her face, even though I want to come in here and draw it, but just for our sake, I'm just going to And you see, I'm going kind of very general here. I don't want to kind of overwhelm myself with detail. So this, I'm just using a different color, even though if I was drawing this, I'd be just using my black pencil. So I just want you to see kind of, this is another layer onto this drawing here. So it's adding kind of like my, again, my rhythm lines onto here. Okay. So you can see all these. What's helpful about clothing is it often tells us, like, gives us all of the kind of clues that we need for the figure. To kind of like show how something kind of wraps around the body. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that here before we move on. So again, if we think of like, we can't, it's hard to see where her knees are in this outfit, so I can go back to here and go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so between 5 and 6 is her knee, would be somewhere right in here, which is where it actually is, right? So let's say we've got, this is her thigh, and then we've got, so you can, then if you want, you can kind of come back in and kind of build it out with like the previous technique, right? You can kind of add some shapes in here. So this outfit that she's wearing is actually not particularly form-fitting, so it makes it a little bit tricky now that I'm actually drawing it to be able to see some of those things. So, and again, as I'm going here, I realize, well, you know what, maybe I need to bring this arm in even more. So I don't think I'm going to spend too much more time on this here. I'm going to try doing a few that are much faster, just so you see how this would work. But you can see my original block was a little bit wider, and I had to kind of continue to kind of chisel in and in and in as we go here. All right, and as I look at this, I may even feel like her face should kind of move over a little bit. I feel like there's a bit of a problem with her shoulders, but again, it's just, I just think it's really helpful to you want to get into, as I say, the ballpark. You want to be able to, you know, if I just said, without any of the technique we learned last week or this week, draw for me the drawing on the screen, most people would get lost really quickly and would probably spend the majority of their time drawing the face, because that's just what most people will do. So this helps us kind of start, you know, it's a diagnostic tool that can help us locate kind of familiar points, and then to kind of everything moves in relationship to those points. Okay. So maybe I'll leave that on the screen just so you can see that while I find... let me do a few more here. Something a little bit different. Is this too familiar? Kind of like what we've just been doing. It's kind of like what we just, although I do kind of feel like that would be a good one to do if you wanted to. let me see. I'm going to go up here, look for crouching. How do you spell that? Oh, yeah. Crouching. Okay, I don't see Captain Marvel crouching. But I do see some other figures. Okay, here we did Black Widow earlier, so here's another Black Widow. So I'm just going to drag this onto my desktop here. Okay. So I'm going to do this drawing, and maybe I'll go a little bit quicker because I want to begin one final drawing for today here shortly. So I'm just going to show you how I could do this much faster. Okay, so I'm going to sharpen my pencil a little. So this drawing is actually helped by the very flat bottom here. So I can even, I'm going to rotate my sketchbook somewhere like here. So again, this is the edges of my page are pretty much on this edge to edge on the screen. So this is helpful. I can use this. I've got a flat thing that basically tells me that her knee and her foot are, right on that edge. The hand maybe comes down just a little bit more. Okay, so let's say I've got the knee. I'm going to draw up here. Oh, let's go all the way up to the hand. And then let's come all the way back down here to this foot. Okay, boom. I got this. If I went to the quarry, this is what I need, right? I'm going to kind of, her hand up here, head. Okay, again, she's got her thumb here. Okay. See, I'm drawing right through her arm. Right, that middle finger helps me see where her part in her hair is. So I'm just looking at some of the comments. Heidi says, I have to say that this is hard to make my brain wrap around this idea of how to draw. It definitely is a little bit tricky, right, at first, for sure. I think most people find this a little bit unusual at first, but if you kind of stick with it, you can kind of, some people really love it. And when I teach these classes, I always ask, like, was this helpful for people? And I'd say maybe half of the room is like, whoa, this is amazing. And some people are like, this is not for me. It does not work for me. All right, so it's helpful just to learn that, I think, is helpful. To learn what works for you and what doesn't. Okay, so I'm just gonna try to really quickly draw in some hair. Kind of hard to see in this image. I think this is a knee or something right around here, right? So it does help that I know a little bit about human anatomy to kind of guide me around, which is why I didn't teach this technique right off the bat. But let me see. I'm trying to finish this here in about another 2 minutes so that we can move on to the final drawing. Okay, I think I'm going to call it pretty quickly here. But see how now I've been able to kind of, actually, what I'll also kind of just show is we can also use the wall in behind, and you see how there's like this doorway that is in behind here. So all of that kind of stuff is also helpful, right? So if this is this door, and it runs right behind here, that kind of, this would be here. We got this door handle, right? So then again, once I can help locate the figure on here, then, you know, I'm not going to spend time doing all of her hair and everything, but the basic part of the figure is now located on the page. Okay. So I see Peter saying, yes, this is difficult for me too if moving one section affects another section. Yes, yes, okay. I get what you're saying. So it's, you know, in some of these previous drawings, you know, when this had to move, or when I had to kind of make a decision to kind of shift this around and move her head over, that is very frustrating. No doubt it's frustrating to have marks on the page and then have to move them because something's not working. But what is even more frustrating is to have a really beautiful, well-done face and then realize, oh no, I've got a well-done face and a well-done leg. One of them's got to go, and I've spent like an hour in my drawing already. Let's say 45 minutes here, 15 minutes here. Okay, what am I going to do? So that is the nightmare situation that a lot of artists constantly face. So what I'm always trying to get people to do is to prevent that situation from happening as much as possible. And the way to do that is by spending time using one of these techniques, the one that we're using today, the block-in, or the like the line of action technique, so like a stick figure technique. There's actually hundreds of different kinds of ways, but the line of action is probably the most common one. So it's much easier to diagnose those problems within the first 5 minutes of a drawing and then to start building over top of it, rather than to spend more time and you're like, oh, I've just nailed the face, it's perfect, and then realizing there's a big problem, having to kind of start all over or do a big move. So I want to be able to find those problems within the first, like, in a drawing that, you know, I just did here. I don't know how long it took me, 5-10 minutes at most. I'd want to be going even faster, really. Like if I'm showing this to people, drawing a model that's standing in front of them in a room, you want to be able to do this in about a minute or less. And I know some people are like, what, a minute? Well, it gets easier and easier the more. Some of you, might be some of the very first times you've ever drawn a figure, right? So obviously this is going to be a little bit more difficult than it is for me or somebody who's been doing it for a little while, right? If there's somebody out there who's watching this who's done figure drawing for a while, often people find that when they see this technique, it's like, whoa, you just kind of blew my mind, because now I can use this to help solve problems in my drawing. So with any kind of art technique, it's always you learn different strategies and they kind of go into the back pocket, and then when a problem arises, you pull it back out and then you can apply it to help solve your problems. So while I totally understand it can be very frustrating when things aren't kind of right, it's better for them to be wrong earlier in the drawing than later, right? So if you can use the metaphor of building a house, right? You'd much rather, you know, if you have an empty plot of land, and then you start building, and then you realize, like, oh no, the foundation has been poured too narrow or big, or it's sloped. You'd much rather find that out when all you have is the foundation and the cement is still drying, and you're like, oh, this is a major pain, but okay, let's get in there and let's shovel some of that wet concrete out and fix the problem now. You'd much rather have that happen, as painful as it would be, than to be, you're putting the molding onto the wall and you're installing the kitchen cabinets and realizing there's a massive crack in the foundation and you've got to tear all of this, the marble countertops and all that out, and work comes to a halt and half the building has to come down, right? So you want to be able to solve these problems as early as possible. So that's why even practicing drawings that are at the finished level that this one is, that I've just drawn for you, you want to be able to do as many of these as quickly as possible. So forget trying to draw something super, super refined at this stage of your artistic ability, right? Okay, speaking of which, let's go to our final drawing of the day. So this is here in the thumbnail to the video. I've got an epic sneeze coming on here. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. I can feel it. It's going to blow out your speakers. Okay, so let's do this again. We're going to try to get a finished... We'll get the basics done in 10 minutes. And then if you want to kind of continue adding it, do your costume, some shading, all that kind of stuff, then you're welcome to do that. So we've got our pencil here. Personally, I would like to use just a black and white, but I think I'm gonna stay here with my magenta and teal, just for your sake at home. Okay. Can I make this any bigger? Yeah, I'm just gonna make it a little bit bigger. I'm cropping a little bit of the top of her hair out, but okay. So I'm also going to maybe take out that suitcase and the backpack and all that kind of stuff. So let's say we're going to look for, and even just this line I put down, it's not even scientific, right? Like, even if I look at it, it probably should be something. It's just get that line on the page, obliterate this scary white piece of paper, right? Just get that out of the way. All right, so I got a line here. Let's go all the way down to her foot. All right, we've got this kind of diamond shape here. Whether it's correct or not, don't worry about it, right? I mean, I can see problems with this already, right? But that's okay. That's again, it's a diagnostic tool that helps me kind of narrow in the parameters here. Okay, so let's come back up here to her head. I'm even gonna kind of quickly draw in her face here. You know what? I'm gonna set a little timer for myself, just so I got 10 minutes here, right? Let's move that off to the side. Okay, so I got chisel her shoulder out. So I'm kind of just eyeballing things. I'm just kind of, what I'm doing as I'm looking at this drawing is I'm just sort of looking at the shapes, and I'm just trying to, let's say I got this leg down here. All right, I am moving quickly, and I want you to try to move kind of quickly too. I already see my accuracy level is very low here, right? But I'm not getting fixated right now on getting these lines correct. Like, don't get lost in the weeds here and start going, okay, is this arm the right length? Don't worry about it. Just keep on moving. Keep on moving. All right? This line is not correct. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at this stage. All right? What I want is something that I can react against, right? That I have on the page that I can use just to kind of, I can start hacking into. I need the general boundaries of my drawing. Okay, so now I've got this. Now I'm going to start using my pencil, kind of like, you know, it might be worth just bringing Anthony Ryder's book up here just for a second. He kind of uses example of, you know, like this kind of a compass kind of system here. So I'm just gonna, I can't move that. Oh. All right, so he's talking about, like, you have a compass, and then you're measuring in here to try to find these different kinds of angles throughout your composition, if that makes sense. So again, let's come back to the picture. So I'm looking right now for obvious places where I can see through lines going right through. So let's say I've got, if this is her chin right here, right? Let's say I just draw a line up here, and this would be her mouth, her nose, and her eyes here. Okay. So this line, let's just draw a line going straight down here. What intersects with that line here? And I'm just so you see what I'm doing here, I'm literally holding up my pencil, right? Like you can imagine like this, and I'm kind of tilting it, right? So that I can see these angles, right? I wouldn't be doing it at the camera, but I'd be holding it over top, like, in fact, this is where my computer screen is, right? So, like, if I hold this pencil up over her nose, I see it comes down here, and if anything, this leg kind of would move. So let's do the opposite here. So if this was her toe, like what intersects with her toe? Almost just under her elbow. So that when I look at my own drawing, you know, her toe would be kind of around here. Okay, so each thing becomes kind of just a coordinate, to use that kind of compass thing again, like boom, boom. I'm starting to kind of locate things with more precision. All right, so I'm 5 minutes into my drawing. Okay, so her shoulders here. What else? Let's say if I draw this line through here. Where does it connect to? All right, so now I'm going to hold my pencil up. Kind of, I feel like I'm basically right around her heel there. That's pretty good. Okay, let's see. I got to get this angle of this leg up here. So I'm holding my pencil up. Or for your sake here, let's hold this up. What looks most natural? That looks pretty good. So that means her leg would kind of come up here. And how does this would have to kind of come up? Yeah. Okay. So you see I made some little changes there. Okay. And then if this is her, let's say this part of her arm, right? It kind of slices right up underneath her chin. All right, so this is okay for me. All right, and if that came across, right, this is her chest right in here. And her belly button is right in here. Okay. 3 minutes. Okay. Your ear's a little bit lower there. Okay. Oh, my microphone's getting into my danger area here. It's showing bright red, so we'll see. How's my audio doing? I still got audio. Okay. So even here I can kind of locate this part of her costume. I don't know what that is, a medallion or something there, and that tells us, you know, her this kind of glove she's wearing is right here. Got her thumb here and her fingers. Another glove. Okay. So for me, I love this stage of a drawing, of working out these kind of internal problems that I see, because it means that the likelihood of my drawing being successful increases dramatically. Dramatically. The potential for it to be a good drawing that I'm going to be happy with is much more likely when I'm using a system like this to help me diagnose any kind of problems. Can't really see her foot just in the way that all this stuff that's on my screen, so it feels like I've got everything in here. I still got a minute to go, so what else could I do to this drawing at this point? Well, so here, I did that in 9 minutes, not 10 as the thumbnail says, right? So now let's take a stab at trying to kind of finish this drawing. So let's start adding some detail, and I'm just going to use a different color again. Maybe I'm actually going to try to use some colors that are a little bit closer to the original. Red and blue, and then some kind of, I don't have gold, so we'll just use It's almost like our Wonder Woman colors, eh? Okay. So, actually got to this. Let's go up here. We got her collar. Actually, let's set another. I'm going to set 10 minutes because I think I'm not sure how much battery I have left on all these cameras. Everything's going to start shutting down for me in very shortly here. So, got her shoulder. So she should probably be a little bit higher. And then the star. I'm going to use just a little bit of a different color to your tricep, and then I'm going to kind of ignore that rope or whatever ribbon that's kind of going around her body for now. Oh, maybe the music probably stopped. I think it's I think an hour loop that Sam made for me. So, because originally I said, oh, there's no way my classes will last longer than an hour. Okay. Let's get this medallion. So I got 7.5 minutes left on my clock here. Yeah, maybe let's put a little bit of... Should I do this ribbon here? Maybe I'll do... Let's see, where is it going? It kind of wraps. This one... goes around here. Where that goes, this one up around here, and then we got another one. I don't know. I feel like that's going to take me too long here. With the time I've got is precious. Her gloves here. See, even though we don't we don't see her belly button in her costume or anything, I find it really helpful just to lay those points out once you kind of know where they are in your drawing. It just kind of helps, I'm using too of this kind of the ribbing on the side of her outfit, kind of helps with describing the contours of her body. this other arm here, so I need to do that. She's got one finger out here. Okay, so now I'm going to start coloring a few things in. I got 4.5 minutes left on my clock. Music is in your head. Is the music not playing? Should be there. It's maybe just a little bit lower. I'll put a link to Sam Davidson's website. Sam and I have collaborated, I don't know, dozens and dozens of times. He is or was a member of a local Vancouver group here called Brastronaut, which is kind of, I don't know what the status of that band is. I've done a lot of stuff with them, traveled across the country a number of times, doing visuals with them, and great group of guys. Probably some of my best friends here in Canada. And check out brastronaut.com, I think, is if their website is still up. Maybe they let's see, you got just under 3 minutes. It's not as, is that about the Brastronaut website is down? Probably. Let's see, I don't want to spend time here on her face, but okay, I think that I might just kind of finish here, because there's probably more than most people are going to be able to get done in that period of time anyway. But I just want to kind of show you this technique and how we were able to get from the image on your right to here in, like, what, this took me 15 minutes to do here. And there's like a pretty high degree of accuracy in my drawing when I just like looking back and forth at them here on the screen. I'm not seeing any major noticeable errors that I can think of. You know, I'm just looking at them as everybody else would be, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. Okay, so what I want to do, I do want to chat about, I think there's at least one artwork that was sent to me, so I want to talk about that real quick. I'm just going to bring up on the screen for next class, if you want to have some extra little homework for next Tuesday. So it's to try to practice what we've done, is look around for images of, you know, whether it's superheroes or yourself or friends. You can go on people's Facebook and find their photographs, look at athletes, you know, you could Google a baseball player or a tennis player or a ballet dancer, you know, or whatever it is, find some images, try a few different poses, and maybe try going back and forth using the various different techniques. Like, see if you can try doing the block-in technique a little bit more, or try doing the going back to the line of action and trying that for, you know, you could use the same image, same source image in two different ways to see if one just connects with you, because that's what you want to do. Like, I think people are under the impression that there is one right way to draw, and that if you can't draw that way, then there's something wrong with you. You lack talent, as it's called, right? And you know, I've done a bunch of reading over the past couple of years, and there really is no such thing as a genius. You know, at least when it comes to visual art. And I'm trying to think of a few books. I think it's one. What's it called? Is it Drive? There's a few of them that came out over the past couple of years that were like research heavy, talking about this idea of genius. And the long story short is that it's just a myth. That, you know, whether it's, you've heard of Malcolm Gladwell talking about the Beatles, and I think it's the 10,000 hour rule. It's just practicing something over and over again. And those people like Mozart and Picasso, who seem to be like these young prodigies, also just happen to have fathers who were composers, in Mozart's case, or Picasso's father was an artist who showed them how to use these basic techniques just really early, and they just were developing and practicing all the time. So it didn't just sort of explode out of nowhere, come out of a cave with this amazing ability. It's just about using these techniques over and over and finding one or two or some Frankenstein kind of amalgamation of all of them that works for you, right? So if you did this, if you stuck around through the whole class today and you're like, this block-in technique is garbage, I never doing it ever again, you don't have to. But you may find a few years later from now, if you're sticking with drawing, that actually you might take a little part of this. Maybe it's just diagnosing a part of a drawing that you've got down and using that kind of compass to help find the correct angle, right? To figure out an arm or a leg that just seems a little bit weird and you can't figure out why, right? So, but you need to kind of experiment with them for a little bit. You know, one of my favorite TV shows is America's Test Kitchen, and a PBS show where, you know, they take, you know, 50 different brownie recipes, right? And they make some with eggs and without eggs, with egg whites and without egg whites, and only, you know, the yolks, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they make every single possible one, and they try to come up with like the ultimate recipe, right? And that's not to say that there's there's one really good one and 49 bad ones, because you might be able to serve all 50 of them, and people go, and some people are going to love number 7, and some people are going to say number 30 is the best and number 7 is my least favorite, right? So you have to try all these and figure out which one works best for you. Okay, so I don't see, no one's posted here saying that they have a picture for me, except I thought I got, where did I put it? Maybe it's on the desktop. Okay. And I'm just going to do another double check here. Okay. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And so the image on the screen here is that Heidi sent in. She actually sent this in at the very end of last week's class, or Tuesday's class. So I just want to kind of quickly talk about it, because I think it's a great drawing, and I really appreciate her sending it in here for us to chat about. So we've got this really beautiful, oh, this camera above me just ran out of batteries, so I imagine this one's going to run out here in about 2 minutes, so keep it short. Yeah, I think this is beautiful drawing. You should be really proud of this one. Well done, Heidi. I love, you know, some of like this leaf down here that's on the, some kind of a gourd or pumpkin or something. That is beautiful. I really like the way it's outlined. That just really shows a great attention to detail here. All of it, lots of great detail. Like all of the petals of the flowers, they feel like individual flower petals, which sounds obvious, but you know, when little children draw a flower, everything is like totally symmetrical, right? Every single flower petal could have been done with a stamp, right? Which is, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but if you're trying to draw something that you see, well, then you want to, as accurately as possible, convey the individual characteristics of all these different details, right? So I feel like, you know, these areas here, like this, is great. And the gap between these, like some people would have felt very compelled to just draw another petal in here to fill up that space. But this helps keep it very individual, right? Even this like leaf that is kind of still, you know, inside here, maybe it's a leaf on the flower. Fantastic, right? And I like this in behind here. Looks like a piece of like wood grain, like plywood, right? So you're helping convey the texture of the background in your drawing. And then we've got these reflections on what looks to be maybe a metallic kind of flower vase, water jug or whatever. So that's great because we can see this in the brightness and the darkness, and then also this gourd. Now that I come back around, which is what we want to be doing. We want the eye to be circulating around the picture. You know, I come and look at this, and then I'm like, oh, it shoots me up into here, and I'm looking at here, and then I come around, and I'm looking at the background, and I get sucked into the picture. So from all the images you've sent me so far, Heidi, I think this is your most successful. Absolutely. I think it's the most convincing. I really like how dark you allowed yourself to go. Like the darkest part is inside of this vase, right? Where the light is where we would expect it to be darkest, right? And then we have just little bits of extra darkness under in here, and this really beautiful texture that you've got on here. The more I look at this, I think this might be my favorite part of your drawing, this bottom left corner. Do I have comments on it? Not really. What could I say here? You know, I think we might expect to see a little bit more shadow underneath this leaf on top of the vegetable. But a gourd, like a pumpkin, is a vegetable, right? Not a fruit. I can never remember what is what. So I think all of that's really good. I guess I'm looking, the spiraling on here is one of those things I'm trying to decide, do I like that or not? I think I do. It does make it seem kind of more metallic, kind of like a brushed metal kind of surface. I feel like your shadows could be, there might be a little bit more darkness in some of these shadows, because maybe that was the lighting situation that you had when you were working on this, that there was maybe a little bit of diffused light, like fluorescent light bulbs kind of scattering the shadows around. That is why when we're drawing in maybe more of a studio setting, we often will use much more theatrical lighting, as it's called, right? So rather than kind of the overall lighting where we see, you know, we want, like in the studio right now, everything's kind of well illuminated. If I was to set up a still life, what I would very deliberately do is, start turning some of the lights off so that I have, maybe more light coming in from one area and then some stronger shadows on the other side, so that it's not, because often actually a very even lighting, as nice as it is for our eyes to look at, is maybe not as satisfying as that more dramatic lighting that we would, we often see in movies like film noir specifically. But anyway, so that would just be my little mini suggestion there. Otherwise, I think you should be very, very satisfied. So I look forward to seeing what you do next week, if you've got another one you want to show me. And I think that's everything. I just want to take a quick look and see if I've got any other messages. It doesn't look like it. You said you're not sure about this fruit or the veg, or what it is, or anyway. I think you did a great job, and you should feel very, very happy. Thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you everybody else who's tuned in for today's episode and who drew along with me. I would love to see the results of your final drawing, this one that we just did, or any of the other ones earlier on. It's not uncommon for you to do maybe, an earlier, maybe your warm-up drawing was the best drawing you did, right? And that could feel a little bit discouraging, but think about if you sit down for an hour and a half, and you make 5 drawings, and one of them is satisfying and feels really good, and that is a huge success. Don't look at it as, I did 5 drawings, only one turned out, like I'm a big failure. Like that, think about baseball players, like the best baseball players in history, hit the ball like 30% of the time and struck out or were walked, or, if you know anything about baseball, but 70% of the time they failed, right? So the very, very best ones are like 35% of the time successful. And those are the people making $20-40 million a year, right? So if you're, so the people in AA, single A, triple A baseball, their hitting average is much lower. It's like 10, 15, 20%, right? So think about that in terms of your drawing. If you're making 10% of the drawings you may make are successful, that's good. Don't feel bad about that, right? And it's certainly better than all the people out there, the vast majority of people out there who aren't doing anything. It's like Wayne Gretzky used to say, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I love that quote, because that's the same thing. 100% of the drawings you don't make are bad drawings, right? So if you're drawing, the likelihood that you're going to make a drawing that you do like goes up every single time you make another one. So keep on drawing, and we're going to see you next week, and I can't wait to see what you've done. If you do a little bit of extra practicing in the meantime, I'd love to see those. So take care, have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye, everybody.